What is going on, y'all? GamersGoon here today with another video regarding the draft. And this video, we're going to be talking about some receivers the Bears might select. You won't be able to see it on my PFF, but I do have that pulled up right now. And I also just got done entering in all the scores for the RAS scores, the relative athletic scores. Now, my numbers are slightly different because I don't have the 20-yard splits, but for the most part, it should hold up. But my athletic scores for these players, I was looking at some of the players that I had listed, and they're about where they should be from what other people have them. So, anyways. Here we go. I've got five. We're going to talk about five receivers in this video. Obviously, we know the top three. We know the top three. There's no need to talk about them anymore. They're all great players. We all know they're great. Let's be honest. We know that. If we get one at 9, we're smiling, we're happy, we're going home proud. But what if we don't get one at 9? That's the question here for the Bears. What if we don't get one at 9? Then we got to find somebody else at 75 and 122 potentially. And I'm going to go off the assumption that there's no trades or anything like that. So we're just going to find guys that kind of fit around those ranges of 75. And the first guy, actually average draft pick number 75.7, his PFF ranking is 76th. A kid that I think is going to be very solid. I will put it on the screen here. His RAS score that I got, I mean, slightly different than the other ones that do have his 20-yard splits. You might even be able, if some of these players went through their stuff on their pro day. I didn't go through their pro day, but there's reports of some of these guys that have done their pro days that maybe they did a better time or something like that. We're just going with their combine score, what they did at the NFL Combine. But the first guy being Devontae Walker. I know a lot of people should be excited about Devontae Walker. If you look at him, he is an interesting prospect. He should be a guy that I think could maybe even slide his way into the second round. He was at a time, if we look at his trends, the highest he was ever projected to go was 22nd. That was about around December, and then he fell off after that a little bit. But you look at Devontae Walker, there's a lot to like with him. And I'm going to look at my phone because I have his scoring down here. Obviously, his height, 6'1" and a half. That's something that you would be excited for, especially because I still think you need big body receivers. Not necessarily, I don't think you need PFF ranks him as 6'2", but on his combine he came in at 6'1" and a half. But you don't necessarily need a jump ball threat, but I still think you need guys with size. Obviously, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, those two guys are going to be special for us next year. But then we kind of already got the role figured out a little bit with those slot receivers, Tyler Scott, Velus Jones. Whether or not they are high caliber slot receivers is a different question, but you're probably going to be looking at trying to find a fourth receiver that can develop into something, maybe take over Keenan Allen's spot when Keenan Allen's gone, and Devontae Walker strikes that perfectly. You look at him, he graded out perfectly in the green. I graded him at a 9.8 athletically. He ran a 4.36. That's pretty impressive. You got speed that you still want. Obviously, Tyler Scott, Velus Jones brought in for speed. And we know a little bit more about Velus Jones than Tyler Scott, obviously, because Velus Jones has been here for a little bit. But Velus Jones, his speed necessarily hasn't translated to much on the field on Sundays. Maybe Tez Walker, his will. 6'1" and a half, like I said. The biggest concern here with him is his weight. He is 193, which is in the red. So that his size grade it's just a good grade. It's not anything elite, great, anything like that. But you look at his explosion. He's an elite athlete there. Ran very good times with the 40. Didn't do any agility testing at the combine though, so we don't know much about that. But he should be fast. He should be explosive. He should be a guy that should translate, especially if you're using him as the third receiver in that trio with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. The expectations should not be super high for him, which gives him time to develop. Obviously, having time alongside DJ Moore and Keenan Allen should also help him develop pretty well. So Devontae Walker is definitely a guy I would look at. He's coming off a season. I mean, for only 41 grabs last season. He had 58 the year before. 66 targets. You'd maybe like to see that number be a little higher. That's about 66% of targets he brings in. Only 3 drops, though. Sometimes it's just quarterback play. So Devontae Walker. I know they had Drake May there, but Devontae Walker, a nice athlete, a nice guy that you think maybe there's something with him in getting him to the Chicago Bears. Next, we are going to drop down to the next guy that I have graded, and that is Jalen McMillan. I think he fits in here at the 75 spot perfectly. PFF actually has Jalen McMillan at 85th and an 83 overall draft pick. I love Jalen McMillan for the simple reason he played with Michael Penix. They were air raid offense. Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze. This guy, the big knock about Jalen McMillan, in my opinion, is that Jalen McMillan was the third option for most of his career, or well, in most of last season. He obviously playing behind a top 10 receiver. He's playing behind probably a second round receiver in Jalen Polk, maybe at worst third round with Jalen Polk. He was the third guy on a team of stacked receivers. 5 drops, that's gonna come with the territory. 45 receptions as a third receiver with 63 targets. Maybe you'd like to see that conversion rate a little bit higher, like I said. But Jalen McMillan, there's a lot to like about him. Great athlete. His size is kind of what's holding him down on his RAS scores. 6'1", not the greatest. 197, a little underweight for being 6'1". But his explosion, great. 37 vert, a 10-7 broad jump. I mean, a sub 4.5 at 6'1" for the 40-yard dash. Very good. His agility testing was kind of average coming in, but I still think Jalen McMillan does pan out to be a pretty good athlete in terms of that. Got a very high. I think this is a guy that, I mean, we kind of heard it a little bit with Velus Jones when he got drafted. He's a guy that could be special, but I think he has a good floor. Velus Jones has had a solid floor as a returner when he has been able to bring the ball in, but maybe not necessarily as high as we'd hoped. I think this is a guy that kind of eliminates those concerns. He was the third receiver. He's used to being the third receiver on a team, stacked team, like I said, at Washington last year. And he's going to come into a situation very similar, that he's going to be the third guy behind DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and that's going to give him time to develop. Only 22 years old. Like I said, great athlete, should be good enough to kind of develop into that third receiver for the Bears, and eventually maybe that number 2 behind DJ Moore when and if Keenan Allen retires as a Chicago Bear. But I would really like to see us bring in Jalen McMillan, because I do think he's one of those talents that might go a little underappreciated in this draft, because he is somebody that I'm telling you, he would be a lot higher in my opinion if he was like if Rome wasn't there and Polk wasn't there. I think probably we're talking about Jalen McMillan kind of in the same breath as some of those second round receivers like the Troy Franklins and the Xavier Worthies and those kind of guys. I really think Jalen McMillan is a talented player, but unfortunately for him, he was the third receiver on that team, so we don't get to mention him with those guys. But I think Jalen McMillan at 75, if some of those other receivers are gone, I would definitely jump all over that. Jalen McMillan's a very good talent that I really do like. And then also, I only had 3 guys that we could take at 75. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I mean, Javon Baker, Johnny Wilson. I mean, there's a lot of interesting talents. I'm only giving you 5 guys total. So I wanted to do 3 for 75 and 2 for 122. The guy at 75 that I really like, and I also graded him out very well, Malik Washington. Now, his size is very, very, very bad. Like, he is 5'8" and a half. Not that he ain't a big guy. Only 191, but I think he's going to be fine in the NFL. you put him in the slot, which is kind of, I know we've toyed around with Tyler Scott and Velus Jones in the slot, but this guy could have some potential here. The last 2 seasons, he's caught the ball 176 times. 176. Last year, over 100 receptions in college football is ridiculous. 111 receptions last year off 138 targets. He had a conversion rate pretty high. We were talking about, the last 2 receivers were talking about how, they were targeted about 60 times and had about 40 receptions. This kid's conversion rate is insane. Obviously he plays underneath a lot, but 1,000-yard receiver last year, 1,384 yards last season, 9 touchdowns, big year last year. That was really his breakout year. Still 65 receptions the year before, only 1 touchdown. He was only really providing touchdowns last season, and then the 2 seasons prior he only had 3 total. But tripled that last season. Malik Washington got the job done. You look at him, 4.4 speed, 4.47 was what he came out to be. 10-yard split was beautiful, 1.53. Vertical, he can jump, man. He can jump. 42.5 for his vert, 10.06 for his broad. This kid's going to be a good athlete. He's a good athlete, and that makes me excited for the potential of Malik Washington. He showed to be a good athlete at the combine. He's been a big-time playmaker in college with 111 receptions, and you kind of think that maybe Malik Washington could come in and be that third receiver for the Bears. Slot guy, he's probably just going to be a slot guy in the NFL, which you're going to have to accept, but I think obviously with the 2 guys you got already as number 1 and 2, Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, you don't necessarily need a 6'2" guy. I know we talked about the ideas of some of them already, but maybe you're okay just finding a very talented slot receiver. He should do fine. He's a strong player for what it's worth. He benched 19. He had 19 reps on bench for his size. That's absolutely great. But I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be fine getting an open space. He's going to be shifty. He's not going to get the most attention out of teams, obviously, with the 2 guys we already got there. So Malik Washington should be open underneath. He should be able to make plays fast enough. I believe he's agile enough. I think he's going to be a special player in the right system. And the Bears could be that system, because I think he is going to be somebody that's going to be really tough to stop. If you got a linebacker matching up over him over the middle or something like that, they're not going to be able to keep up with Washington. So Malik Washington, somebody I would watch out for if I'm a Chicago Bears fan. I really like his game. I think he could be kind of that guy to fit in here at 75. Then our next guy on the board is actually a guy that I know a lot of people are kind of taking an interest in, and for good reason. For good reason. That's Luke McCaffrey. Obviously, the McCaffrey last name is going to go a long way, but 71 receptions last year, 58 the year prior, just kind of similar. His conversion rate wasn't great. He had 49 incompletions, but some of that's quarterback play. 49 times he got targeted, he didn't bring the ball in. The year prior, 30. But some of that's just quarterback play. But Rice, not the greatest of opponent or of teams they go against, and that's going to hold him down a little bit. But I have Luke McCaffrey graded out pretty well as an athlete, which is great. His last 2 seasons at Rice were fine. He's a guy that he's pretty fast, believe it or not. He comes in at 6'2", 198. Maybe you'd like to see the weight be a little bit heavier there, maybe around that 205 to 210 range there. But it's fine. It's not bad. 6'2", once again, a guy that kind of fits that Devontae Walker role where, you're not necessarily going for that third receiver kind of mindset. You're going for, who ultimately could be the guy to replace Keenan Allen when he does decide to leave the Bears, because once again, we got to re-sign him eventually. And once again, he's also like 31, 32 years old right now. So 3 or 4 years down the line, we're going to be looking for a receiver to fill this gap. That could be a guy like Luke McCaffrey here, 6'2". He's going to be eligible to step into that role, and he's also a really good athlete. For the time being, he'll be receiver 3, but I think here at 122, it's a nice little pickup. Not the most explosive player, but he is a good explosive player according to the rankings. 36 vert, maybe you'd like to see that be a little bit higher for a guy you're kind of going to mold into a receiver too at some point. But the 40-yard dash, it checks out. 4.46, beautiful numbers. 10-yard split checks out, beautiful. His agility testing came out great. He should have no problems. He should have no problems as an athlete making it. It's just going to be a matter of not. If the Bears are able to develop this kid, I think honestly he's going to be somebody that is going to be kind of a dark horse in this draft. He's going to be somebody that he's going to be a high value player in those mid rounds because he has the experience, he has the targets, he has what you want in terms of a lot of snaps at the college level the last 2 years, and a lot of targets is also brilliant because I mean we talk about some of these guys maybe got only 60 targets. Some of these talents only got 60 targets. The ball went to McCaffrey a lot, which is going to hopefully help him in the NFL. He's going to have the experience. He's going to have reliable hands. He's going to be able to know what to do in certain situations. Only 3 drops last season. Should be a fine player. Here at 122 for the Bears, like I said, tested very good. I graded him at a 9.45, which is very, very good for Luke McCaffrey's. I mean, and if you look at the Bears, they love to draft great athletes, more so than necessarily. I mean, look at Braxton Jones. Not the highest level of college football being played there, but a great athlete. I mean, they've talked about replacing Braxton. I don't like the idea of replacing Braxton. I really like him, but it is what it is there. And then the last guy I've graded, I really like the idea of this kid here. Cornelius Johnson out of Michigan. He's a very interesting player to me. He is ranked 147th, one spot behind McCaffrey. But Cornelius Johnson, very interesting. The last 3 years, not huge production. 47 receptions last year after 66 targets, like I said. With McCaffrey, you like seeing 120 targets. You like seeing that because that's a lot of targets. Not a lot of teams got a guy that has that many targets. But this guy just screams NFL caliber receiver. He screams it. Is he going to be a superstar? I don't know. But he seems like a guy that should be able to slot in, especially in an already good receiving core with your top 2. He should be able to be that third guy. You're not necessarily bringing him in right away to be a star receiver, but I think he's going to come in and be pretty impactful next season. 6'3", 212, Cornelius Johnson out of Michigan. Great size there for a receiver. I like it. They rated it as good for the RAS score, but I think that's fine. I'm not worried about any of that. His explosion, very good. 37.5 vert, 10.7 broad. I mean, you got a good athlete there. Ran a 4.4. Ran in 4.44. So very fast kid. 6'3", having that speed is special. I mean, it's hard to pass up on a kid that can run a 4.4. That's 6'3". You don't get many of those every year. I mean, and if you do get them, they're at the top of the draft. But one of these guys that kind of fallen through the cracks, maybe a 4th, 5th round talent, Cornelius Johnson. I think you're looking at him, and I mean the production's not great over the last 3 years. It's not. I'll give it to you. He's had in the last 3 years 1,600 receiving yards, about give or take, and that's kind of about 500, 600 yards a year on average. Meaning 600 last year, 600 in 2021, and about 500 in 2022. So around that 1,700, I think actually is what it pans out to be. But anyways, you don't get much. You don't got much to go off of when it comes to that Michigan roster. J.J. McCarthy did not throw the ball a lot with Michigan. Kind of maybe that's part of it. Only 1 touchdown last year, but I think that's going to be fine. I don't think it's going to be something to be concerned about. I think that you just look at that Michigan team, and a lot of that is just Blake Corum is so good. That offensive line was so good. They just ran through them. They just had to go ride with what was working and Blake Corum. So maybe somebody like Cornelius Johnson might have took a little bit of a hit in his draft stock. Maybe he's a guy that we could have been talking about in that third round. But ultimately, he's here at 122. Interesting athlete to look at. Like I said, not great production, which is kind of the concern there with him. But I think you got the size, the athletics, the measurables, all that works out to be perfectly fine. I mean, for my RAS score, I graded him out to be about a 9.7. About a 9.7. So it's a very good athlete there in Cornelius Johnson. And to recap, we had the 9.8 athletic score from Tez Walker. Tez Walker was our first guy that we mentioned. Then Jalen McMillan had about a 9.28, almost 9.3 there for McMillan. I really like him and what he can bring. Malik Washington had 8.92. I believe that was the lowest of everybody, kind of because of that size, but I think he'll be fine. Luke McCaffrey, we got a 9.45 athletics grade on him. Like I said, kind of level of competition, so it's holding him back. And then you got Cornelius Johnson at Michigan, a 9.7 about with a 9.69. So thank you for watching. I'm about to come in and do I'm going to do an edge rusher video too, because I think that's a big. It might just be defensive line video, honestly, because I think we could talk about some defensive tackles as well. But thank you for watching the receiver video. Let me know which kind of sleeper receiver you're looking at. Maybe it's somebody I didn't mention. I mean, I was kind of looking at maybe saying Jacob Cowing out of Arizona. I mean, there's some guys down there that maybe make more sense, but I just wanted to list 5 guys that I think could be interesting prospects for the Chicago Bears. Obviously, Luke McCaffrey, somebody that a lot of people think could be very interesting. So we'll see what ends up happening on draft day. 2 days away, big day for everybody. Going to be exciting. I'll probably have a video out on Friday with the Chicago Bears first round recap, whatever. We're going to look deeper into the athletic scores there for the players that we draft, assuming that we draft somebody that could be of some interest in the RAS scores. But for the rest of the draft, I mean, if we get like some 5th, 6th round picks, we're going to take maybe a little bit of deeper dive into those guys. I mean, obviously the first we don't need to really take a deep dive into Caleb Williams. We know what Caleb Williams is, but maybe not on Friday. We won't dive into RAS. But if we get maybe somebody the next few days after 4th, 5th rounds, whatever. Maybe we'll do a little bit of a deep dive and see what they're all about and see if they might be able to translate for the Chicago Bears. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time with the defensive video. Thank you.